auxiliary verb is in the main statement, then we should use the correct form, the appropriate form of do to make the tag question at the end. However, as in point number 4, if there is an auxiliary verb, so if we do see some case of have or be used, then we need to use the same auxiliary verb in the tag question, but we still need to follow this rule, the positive and negative rule. So, for example, he hasn't finished his homework, has he? Here the auxiliary verb has is used, but I have the negative form. He hasn't finished his homework. So I need to match this with the positive, has he? He hasn't finished his homework, has he? Next one, she's left the office, hasn't she? Here the verb might be hard to find. It's this apostrophe S. She's left, meaning she has left the office, hasn't she? Here I've used the negative because the positive, she has, is used in the main statement. Finally, they were listening to our conversation, weren't they? Here I'm using were, the positive were, in the main statement, so I need to use the negative weren't in the tag question. So please be careful when you're using an auxiliary verb in your main statement, make sure to use the opposite form of the auxiliary verb in the tag question. All right, let's go on to part 5. So part 5 is a little bit special. So if am or are, if one of these words is used in the main part of your statement, then we'll use are or aren't to make the tag question here. This one's a little bit special. So for example, I'm is the contracted form of I am. So I'm bleeding, I am bleeding. Aren't I? So again, the same positive and negative rule. I am bleeding. Aren't I? Aren't I? So we'll use the negative aren't here to match with the positive I am. Another example, you're not leaving, are you? So here, you are not leaving. You are not leaving, are you? So here we have a negative form. You're not leaving, are you? So here we need to use the positive form in the tag question. Finally, they're going home, aren't they? So here we have they are going. So there's a positive form. They are, they are. So we need to match this with the negative form. They're going home, aren't they? All right. So please be careful if you see this am or are in your main statement. Please be careful of that. Finally, point number 6, if you use a modal verb, so this is like will, won't, could, should, would, for example. If a modal verb is used in the main part of the statement, we need to follow the same rule. Use the modal verb in the tag question as well, just use the opposite form of that. For example, I shouldn't eat this, should I? So here shouldn't is my modal verb. I've used the negative shouldn't, so we'll use the positive should in the tag question. I shouldn't eat this, should I? Another one, he won't call, will he? So won't, in this case, the negative won't is used. So I need to use will, the positive form in the tag question. Finally, they wouldn't hurt us, would they? Again, there's the negative form in the main statement and the positive form in the tag question. So you can see that these 2 points about the positive and negative matching, these really are the basis for making other tag questions. And then just pay attention to whether or not you're using an auxiliary verb as well in your main statement. So always think about matching the opposite form of the verb in the main statement to the tag question there. And also think about your intonation when you're using these kinds of sentences, when you're using these kinds of questions. So as we talked about here, when you want to just get agreement or get confirmation from someone, you can use downward intonation. So for example, he made this, didn't he? Or she didn't go, did she? Or they canceled, didn't they? So there's a very kind of downward sound to it. It sounds a little bit like you're not really asking for information, maybe like you're talking to yourself almost a little bit. However, if you want to actually ask someone for information, make sure to use upward intonation. So to use the same examples, he made this, didn't he? Or she didn't go, did she? Or they canceled, didn't they? So again, it still sounds like you want to get confirmation about something, but when you use the upward intonation, it sounds like you don't actually know. Maybe you have a guess, but you're not quite sure, and you are looking for some information. So please keep your intonation, the sound of your voice, in mind when you're using tag questions. Okay. That's everything that I want to explain for this point. I hope that it was useful for you. If you have any questions or if you want to try to make a tag question, please feel free to do so in the comment section below this video. If you liked the video, please make sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and check us out at EnglishClass101.com for some other good resources. Thanks very much for watching this lesson, and I will see you again soon. Bye-bye. Hi everybody, my name is Alisha. In this lesson, I'm going to talk about the differences between like, as, and such as. And I'm also going to explain some examples of when you might use these words. So let's get started. I want to begin today with the word like. So one of the ways we use the word like is to make a comparison. When we want to compare two things, or perhaps more, we can use the word like to do this. The correct use of the word like, if you want to be very strict, is using the word like before a noun phrase. So when you want to use the word like, or maybe you're guessing, should I use like or as, which we'll talk about a little bit later, make sure to think about the part of the sentence that comes after the word. So after your like or as. Does it use a noun phrase only? Is there just a noun, or maybe a noun phrase? If there's just a noun, then you should use the word like. Like is the best choice. Like is the correct choice in that case. Let's look at some examples of this. Okay, first one. My friend eats like a pig. So here I have the word like, making the comparison between my friend and a pig. So here, a pig follows the word like. It's a simple noun. So I know that like is correct because like should be used before a simple noun or simple noun phrase. Let's look at another example. She sleeps like a baby. Here we see the same pattern. A simple noun, baby, follows the word like. So I know that like is the correct choice here. Last, they cook like professional chefs. So here, professional chefs is my noun phrase that follows the word like. I know that like is correct because I should use it before noun phrases. We'll take a look at some different examples later, what to do when this is not a noun phrase. But please keep this in mind. We use like to make comparisons when the comparison is just a simple noun phrase. Okay, let's look at a couple of other points. We can use the word like to introduce examples, maybe like a list when you're speaking, or maybe when you're writing as well. So when you want to introduce a few examples of something, you can use like to do this. For example, I did lots of things last weekend, like biking, hiking, and mountain climbing. Here I'm introducing a list of activities, hiking, biking, and mountain climbing. I use the word like with kind of downward intonation to introduce that. So I did a lot of things last weekend, like biking, hiking. So you can hear like introduces that. So when I want to introduce the example, I can use this sort of downward intonation to do that. If, however, I want to ask someone for an example, I should use the opposite intonation. This is a very casual way to ask someone for an example. Let's imagine a conversation then. So person A says, I have so many ideas for the weekend. And B says, like. So here, the difference is that I'm using an upward intonation, like, to ask for an example. So person A introduced maybe some ideas, some activities to do for the weekend. B would like to hear some of the ideas, so B requests it with like, with upward intonation. So please keep this in mind. Your intonation is important. If you use different intonation, it might not be clear to the listener. So please keep this in mind when you're using the word like. Okay, let's move on to the next point for today though, the word as. So, as is also used to make a comparison. However, the correct use of as is before a phrase that contains a verb. So when we looked at the word like, we saw that we use like before a noun or a noun phrase. So there's no verb that follows the word like. With as, however, if there is a verb in the phrase that follows the word, we should use the word as. Let's look at some examples. He cooks just as my mother does. So here, I have a verb at the end of this sentence, just as my mother does. Just is just kind of an emphasis word. It's showing that it's exactly the same as my mother does. So here, because I have a verb in the part of the sentence that follows my comparison word, I need to use as. As is the correct choice here. Let's look at another example. This is similar to the one I introduced with the word like. Here, she sleeps as if she were a baby. Here I've chosen if. Here, you see the word were, a verb, follows this comparison word. She sleeps as if she were a baby. So here also I'm noting she is not a baby, but I'm using the phrase as if she were, meaning it seems as if. It seems that she is a baby. She is not a baby, but I'm comparing it. I'm making the comparison with the expression as if she were. So I need to use as here. Okay, last one. We talk just as we did in college. So again, we see a verb follows the comparison word as, did in this case. So I need to use as. As is the correct choice here. Now, although this is kind of the, I suppose, the strict explanation of this, I should mention that native speakers often do not follow these rules. In many cases, in casual conversations, native speakers tend to use the word like for all comparisons. As may sound a bit more formal. So it's very common, it's very natural to make mistakes with these, even among native speakers. If you make a mistake, I don't think you should worry about it. But if it's important to you to be very, very correct all the time, this is a good rule to follow. This is the correct way to use like and as. So remember, like should come before a noun phrase, as should come before a phrase that contains a verb. That's the difference between these two. However, at least in American English, you will hear like used very often to make comparisons. I myself do it. I don't use as so often in my everyday conversations for comparisons. I tend to rely on like more. So maybe we'll see this change, this rule change a little bit more over time. Who knows? Anyway, let's continue on to the last point for today, the expression such as, such as. So such as this is the set phrase. These two words are always together in this case. And we use such as in the same way that we use like for introducing examples or for asking about examples. However, such as just sounds more formal. So if I want to introduce an example, but I'm in a more formal situation like at work, or perhaps with someone who is in a position above me, or I just want to be more polite, I can use such as to describe the examples. Here I have an example sentence. We need to improve our strategies in departments such as marketing, customer relations, and product development. So here I've listed 3 examples, in this case departments, and I introduce those with the word such as, or with the expression such as. So such as is introducing those in a more formal way. Therefore, we can use it again, even in casual situations too, but if you want to kind of elevate that sort of politeness a little bit. Like here, another example, ideas such as hiking, camping, and bowling were discussed for the company retreat. So again, even if you're using kind of casual words to list, even if you're listing kind of casual examples, you can still use the word such as to introduce them. It just sounds a little bit more formal. All right, finally then, just as we saw with the word like, we can also use such as to ask for examples, and this is with upward intonation. So this same rule can apply to the expression such as. So for example, I have so many ideas for the weekend, such as we can use the same upward intonation to ask someone for an example. It's just going to sound a little bit more polite if you choose such as instead of like. So that's a basic overview of some of the differences between these three words or these three expressions. I hope that that was helpful for you. If you have any questions or comments, or if you'd like to try to make a sentence, please feel free to do so in the comment section below this video. If you like the video, please make sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and check us out at EnglishClass101.com for some other good resources. Thanks very much for watching this lesson, and I will see you again soon. Bye-bye. Hi everybody, my name is Alisha. In this lesson, I'm going to talk about the differences between either and neither. I'm going to start by explaining either, and I'm going to talk about the different grammatical uses of this word. Then we're going to compare that to the word neither, and we're going to use a lot of example sentences to show you how these two words work. So let's get started. Okay. As I said, I want to start with the word either for today. Let's start with the use of either as an adjective. So as an adjective, either means one and the other of two things or two people, or one or the other of two things or two people. So let's look at two example sentences. The first one is, there are tall buildings on either side of the street. So on either side shows us that there are tall buildings on one side of the street and there are tall buildings on the other side of the street. So both sides of the street. Either shows us this, one and the other of two things, in this case sides. However, you'll notice that side is used in the singular form. When you use either in this way, you don't need to use the plural form. So saying on either sides of the street is incorrect. Please use the singular side. In this case, we're using the word side. But when you use either in this way, you don't need to use the plural form of the noun that follows. Let's look at the second example sentence for this point. We can have the meeting on either day, on either day. So here, the meaning is the second meaning I mentioned, one or the other of two. So here the topic is a meeting, one meeting. Therefore, from context, we can understand that the meeting is going to happen only on one day, not 2 days. So we know this use of either means one day or a different day, one or the other. So this use of either follows this second meaning of the adjective form. Again here, we see that day, which follows either, is used in the singular form. We don't need to use either days, but either day. So please use the singular here. Okay, so this is the adjective form of either. Let's move on to another use of either, which is as an adverb. So as an adverb, either means in addition, or in other words, and kind of. So we use this to emphasize something that's negative, really. Let's look at an example of how to do that. Here, the service at this restaurant was really bad. The food wasn't good either. So here, we're using either at the end of the sentence to reinforce a negative opinion. In the first sentence here, I've introduced a negative opinion. The restaurant wasn't very good, in other words. The service was bad. And then I'm adding another point. The food wasn't good either. So either is adding emphasis. It's like an addition, in addition, but for negative points, and it comes at the end of the sentence. So we don't say either the food wasn't good. We do not use it in this way. This emphasis comes at the end of the sentence. Let's look at one more example. She doesn't know how to use a smartphone, a computer either. So here we have this kind of casual, not a full sentence, but this is a very common use of either in this case. It's just adding on a small bit of extra information for emphasis. So again, there's this negative point here. She doesn't know how to use a smartphone, so this can be understood as a negative thing. We emphasize it with a computer either. So either shows us this initial phrase, not being able to use a smartphone, is negative, but there's this other thing, she can't use a computer either.
So here we're seeing, again, this negative emphasis, and either comes at the end of the emphasis expression. So this is the adverbial use of either. All right, let's go on though to a couple of other points. First is the use of either as a pronoun. So just as we talked about with the adjective form, as a pronoun, either means one or the other of something. Let's look at some examples. Have either of you seen my keys? So here we have either. Either of you seen my keys. Either shows us there are two people in this situation. There are two people listening to this statement. Have either of you seen my keys? Meaning one or the other of you two people listening. Have you seen my keys? The second example sentence. You can have either of these cupcakes, meaning there are two cupcakes available. Please choose one. Either is okay. You can choose either of these cupcakes, but not both. So here, one or the other is kind of a key point. Also, you'll notice in these sentences, we're following the word either with of. So have either of you seen my keys? And you can have either of these cupcakes. We'll follow either with of in this case. This is quite common when using it as a pronoun. All right, let's go to the last point about either then. As a conjunction. So a conjunction, remember, we use to connect words. Conjunctions are used to connect points in a sentence. So as a conjunction, either presents two or more choices. These choices are connected by the word or. So some examples of this. You can have either cake or ice cream for dessert. So here, either introduces the choices, in this case cake or ice cream, and or separates the two. So either cake or ice cream. So there are some choices presented here. Another example, we can go to either Mexico or Thailand for vacation. So again, two choices are presented. They are introduced by either, and they are connected with the word or. So this is how we can use the word either as a conjunction. All right, so with that, let's then look at the word neither. So here, we can see that either remains in the word. We just have an N at the beginning. So that tells us neither is really the negative form of either, meaning not either. That's the meaning of neither. So as an adjective then, we can assign the same meaning, not either. So we learned either as an adjective means one and the other of two, or one or the other of two. The opposite is true for neither. It means not either. So an example, a quick, easy example. Do you want pasta or pizza? Neither. I want curry. So not either of those two. Do you want this or this? Neither. Neither. I want curry. So I don't want either is a different way of saying that, but neither is a quick way to respond. So we can use it to mean the opposite of either here. We can also use neither as a conjunction, which we use with nor. So here we saw when we use either as a conjunction, we connect the two options with the word or. When we're making a negative, though, we can use the word nor. You might hear the word or used as well, but nor is probably the most correct, or nor would probably be the most preferred choice in this case. You'll be understood if you use or, however, in this case. So let's look at this example. So again, this is the opposite of the use of either, as we talked about before, so the meaning is also not. In an example, his work is neither fun nor challenging. So again, here, we introduce the 2 points with the word neither to show it's going to be a negative, and then the 2 points are connected with the word nor. So in the positive sentence, we saw we used the word or to make the connection. Here in the negative sentence with the use of neither, we use nor to do that. All right, finally, onto a pronoun use. So again, as a pronoun, neither means not either. So in an example sentence of this, neither of them have eaten dinner. So neither, again, we see this of them. Here we saw it as a pronoun too. Have either of you seen my keys? We see the same of when used as a pronoun in the negative then. Neither of them have eaten dinner. So those two people, there are two people involved here, and this person, that person, neither of the two people have eaten dinner in this case. So you'll see this same of used when used as a pronoun. Finally, I want to mention this point up here. We can use neither to express this kind of negative agreement. This is a very common use, and you'll probably hear this a lot. When we want to express negative agreement about something, for example, person A says, I don't like spicy food. Person B says, me neither. You might hear this. So it's expressing, I agree about your negative statement. Please be careful though. This negative refers to a grammatical negative. So here I've used I do not like spicy food in my example sentence. There's a negative not there. So it's natural to say me neither to respond to that. If, however, the speaker said, I hate spicy food, and the second person said, me neither, it's not correct, because there's no negative in the first sentence. It's perhaps a negative idea, I hate something, but there's no grammatical negative in the sentence. So please be careful. If there's not a negative introduced in that first point, you don't need to use neither to agree with that statement. So please keep that in mind. All right, so those are a few key points about the words either and neither. It's a lot of information. If you have any questions or if you'd like to give it a try, please feel free to do so in the comment section below this video. If you liked the video, please make sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and check us out at EnglishClass101.com for some other good study resources. Thanks very much for watching this lesson, and I will see you again soon. Bye-bye. Hi everybody, my name is Alisha. In this lesson, I'm going to talk about how to use would to make some future and future related statements. So I'm going to talk about some ways to use the word would and give some quick explanations. So let's take a look. Okay. The first use of would that I want to talk about is using would for an unreal situation and an unreal future situation too. So unreal means it's not true. Something that is unreal means it's not true now, not true in the future. So we use this to, for example, make a guess, make predictions, or talk about possibility in the future if there's some condition that's true. So you'll see these patterns use if a lot, meaning if that situation were true, something, something, something. So let's take a look at a few examples of this. Okay, first one. I've got a couple of patterns here really, which is if I were something, something, I would in the positive form, or I wouldn't in the negative form. We can also do like he, she, they, we, and so on. So if he or she were, he or she would or wouldn't, blah, blah, blah. And same thing, we can use it here. If it were, it would or it wouldn't. So just a couple of different patterns for you to think about here in the positive and the negative form. But I want to look at actually some finished example sentences here that present an unreal situation and a future unreal outcome. So here I have the same pattern. If I were, we'll use this were, if I were, not if I was, but if I were. You will hear native speakers use if I was. It's not really a communication problem, but were is correct. If I were rich, I would take expensive vacations. So here you see that would is followed by the regular verb. I would take expensive vacations. This sentence shows us if I were rich. This part shows us I am not rich now. But if I were rich, I would take expensive vacations. So meaning this part, this situation is not real. It's unreal. But if it were real, this is the outcome. So unreal situation, but we're just discussing possibility here. Let's look at the next sentence then. Okay, so here, if the party were on a weekend, everyone would come. So here I have were again, and in this case I'm saying if the party were on a weekend, meaning if the party were held on a weekend, everyone would come. So all the people would come. There's a very high chance everybody would come to the party if the party were on a weekend. So this might be a sentence you could hear when you're planning an event. If the party were on a weekend, everyone would come. One more example. If he were a criminal, I wouldn't date him. If he were a criminal, so he is not in this case, in this sentence, but if he were a criminal, I wouldn't date him. So an unreal situation, this person, this he, is not a criminal. However, if he were, the speaker would not date that person. So date means have a relationship with that person. So to kind of visualize this grammar point, we can imagine on a timeline a sort of unreal situation here. So I've marked it here in a dotted line. Now there's this thing that's not real. It's an unreal point. And it relates to an unreal situation in the future. So this is sort of a visualization. We're talking about something not true now, something not true in the future, but perhaps there's a chance that it could come true in some cases, especially with this second example sentence. So we use this to talk about unreal situations. Let's look at some different uses of would though. I think perhaps the most familiar forms in this lesson are for requests and for invitations using would. So we use these are types of questions, but when we want to make a request, we can use would you, blah, 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 or for a more formal situation, would it be possible to? Would it be possible to? So first, would you, we follow would you with a simple verb. So for example, would you give me the files? In a more formal situation, would it be possible to meet later? So these are making requests, these are asking for something. In this case, files. In this case, it's asking about availability. So we can use would to make requests, something we want in the future, maybe immediately, right away, or later in the future. So would is nice to make requests. We can also use would to make invitations, like the very common, would you like to something, as in, would you like to get a drink, or would you like to watch a movie? So using would here, instead of do you want to, sounds a little more polite. It sounds a little bit more formal. Would you like to, blah, 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 sounds a little bit more formal. Okay, but I want to move on to maybe a more difficult grammar point, which is using would to talk about future but in the past. So before I explain this, I want to give kind of a visual explanation of this point. When we're using this, we combine the past tense, as you'll see in a moment. The past tense, usually a verb like know or think. We have this in the past tense, simple past tense. And then in that past tense thought, we have some idea about the future, and we use would to express that idea about the future. Let's look at some examples of this then. Here, I knew you would help me. So here in the past, at some point, my past tense idea, my past tense thought, I can say, I knew you would help me. So in the past, I knew that in the future, but before now, you would help me. So the speaker would say this now after the listener has helped them with something. So I receive help from someone and I can say this, I knew you would help me. So meaning in the past, in the far past, I knew that this would happen. So we can use would to talk about future, but in the past. Let's look at another example of this. Here, he knew we would hate this. He knew we would hate this. So again, the speaker is talking now, and here's this past tense point. He knew, some other guy, somebody, knew that we, the people involved in this situation, we would hate whatever is happening at this point in time. So the speaker, or rather he in this sentence, knew here in the far past that the other people in the situation would hate whatever is currently happening. Okay, one more example. She thought you would like it. This is very common when receiving presents. I thought you would like it, or she thought you would like it. So here, this one is quite easy to imagine, I think. When the person is shopping, in this case she she is shopping and she finds something and she thinks, oh, this person, maybe the listener, will enjoy this present. So in the past, she thought you would in the future like it. And did you like it or not? We don't know. But the conversation is happening now. So she thought you would like it. He thought you would like it. Meaning the speaker, or rather the person who made the decision, thought that the listener would enjoy something in the future, but that future point is before now. Okay, one more example. I didn't invite you because I thought you wouldn't want to come. So here I've got the negative. This is a more complicated sentence. So I'm saying there are two points in the past here. So I didn't invite you is one. I didn't invite you because I thought in the past you would not want to come to my event. I didn't invite you because I thought you wouldn't want to come. So meaning, at the point in time when I was planning the event, I thought the listener would not want to attend the event in the future. So I didn't invite the listener here. So in this way, we're seeing actually two things happening in the past. I didn't invite you because I thought you wouldn't want to come. So we should not use don't in this case. For example, I didn't invite you because I thought you don't want to come. That's incorrect because don't is a present tense. You do not want to come. I would ask that in the present, I would say you don't want to come or don't you want to come in present tense. But here I'm talking about a past tense thought about the future. So I need to use wouldn't in that case. It's quite a complex topic, I think, but that's kind of an introduction to this. So I know that that's a lot of information and it might be a little bit confusing, but if you have any questions, please be sure to let us know in the comment section below this video. Of course, if you liked the video, please make sure to give it a thumbs up. You can check us out at EnglishClass101.com for some other good resources, and also make sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Thanks very much for watching this episode, and I will see you again soon. Bye-bye.
Hi everybody, my name is Alisha. In this lesson, we're going to talk about some expressions you can use to talk about your abilities. So I'm going to introduce some expressions you can use for the past, for the present, and for the future. These are just a few examples of some ways you can talk about the things you can, could, and will be able to do. So let's take a look with a few examples of each pattern. Okay. Let's start with the first one. I can plus a verb. So here the subject in the sample pattern is I, but we can replace I with, for example, he or she or it or they. The same is true for all of the other patterns I'm going to introduce in this lesson. So we use I can plus a verb as sort of the basic, most simple way to express something we are able to do. So example sentences, I can speak English. My verb here is speak in this case. So this could be something many of you can use. Another example, here I've changed the subject to she. So she can, my verb is run. She can run 5K, 5K meaning 5 kilometers, in 30 minutes. So these are just some simple, very basic ways to express something we can do, we are able to do. Of course, we can use the negative for this. I can't speak English. I can't speak Chinese, for example, or she can't run 5K in 30 minutes. We can make the negative with this pattern too. So this is maybe the most basic way to express something you can do, you are able to do. Let's look at another one. This expression is I know how to plus a verb. I know how to do something. So we can use the same verbs we used in the first pattern in this pattern if you like. For example, I know how to speak English is fine. However, we use know how to do something for something that requires like study or something that requires maybe a process. There are rules for that thing. So a sentence like, I know how to run 5K, it's not quite so natural because running
isn't really necessarily a topic of study. Running requires practice, yes, but it's not really something we study. So we use know how to do something for something we have learned how to do. So not necessarily physical practice of something, but we have learned this thing. So some examples. I know how to use Photoshop. So Photoshop is a piece of software, something we can study, something we learn how to use. Another example, he knows how to bake cookies. So here, this is something we need to study, in other words. So there's a process to baking cookies. He knows how to bake cookies. So please keep in mind, as we see in this example, when we change the subject from I to, for example, he, she, or it, the following verb, know, needs to change. We need to modify the verb so it has an S at the end. He knows how to bake cookies. So don't forget this S. However, this verb does not change. He knows how to bake cookies. So we don't need to modify this verb. We'll only modify the first one, which is attached to he, the subject. Okay, so this is for a process, something we study to become able to do. Now, let's talk about a couple of past tense examples. So these two are maybe present tense expressions. Let's talk about some past tense example sentences. The first one, when I was a kid, I could, and our verb. So here I've said, when I was a kid. You can change this, of course, when I was a student, when I was an elementary school student, when I lived in a different city, for example. So this part can change to a different time period in your life. However, here I'm using the past tense could. I could. So this implies, this suggests that maybe this action is not possible for you now. Let's look at some examples. So when I was a kid, I could swim all day long. So this sentence sounds like now I can't, really. It's just a simple expression with past tense, I could. So maybe the speaker is going to share some more information about their current abilities. But here I've used when I was a kid. Again, you can change this to like when I was in swimming club, for example. I could swim all day long. So there are a lot of different variations you can use with this pattern. Anyway, let's look at another example. When you were a kid, so maybe if a parent wants to talk to their son or daughter about their childhood, they can use this expression. So when you were a kid, you could sleep for 12 hours straight. So 12 hours straight means 12 hours non-stop. So you is my subject here. When you, therefore, was in my example pattern changes to were. When you were a kid, you could sleep for 12 hours straight. So again, this is a past tense expression. Let's look at one more past tense expression. Maybe you're familiar with used to. So I used to be able to do something. So where the action is a verb here. So here we have used to. So maybe you know I used to followed by just a simple verb. So like I used to cook every day or I used to exercise every day. Here we introduce I used to be able to. This expression allows us to explain an ability we had in the past. So let's look at some examples. I used to be able to speak Spanish. Here's my verb, to speak Spanish. Used to shows a long time ago in the past, I had this ability, but now I do not. So remember, the nuance of used to is that something was true in the past and it is not true now. I used to. Also, please consider the pronunciation here. So not used to, but native speakers connect the D and the T sound at the end of used and to. So it's not used to, but used to. There's just one sound there, used to. So think of it as dropping the D, used to. I used to do something. One more example. She used to be able to babysit, meaning her schedule maybe has changed. Now she cannot babysit. So
here we have some expressions with used to talk about a past ability. Okay, finally, let's end with one example, a pattern that you can use to talk about future possibilities or future abilities. So you can use this when you want to make a guess about the future. So something you think you might be able to do in the future. So the base pattern is in the future, will be able to verb. So here I have we in my example, we will. So will is the contracted form of we will, and I've used we. In this case, we means all people, all members of society, we, together. So some examples of this. In the future, we'll be able to use AI technology. AI, so artificial intelligence, AI technology. In the future, we'll be able to use AI technology. So you might wonder, why am I using will here instead of like going to, for example? We use will when we're making a guess about the future that we can't really see. So we can't see what's going to happen in the future. And maybe we don't have such a strong level of confidence. We don't have a super high level of confidence about our guess. In those cases, we can use will. So these are nice to talk about capabilities, things we are able to do, or in this case, things we might be able to do in the future. So this is a sentence you can use to make a prediction, to make a guess. Let's look at one more example sentence. Okay. In the future, we'll be able to travel to space. So here again, I'm making a guess about space travel. So I don't have a high level of confidence because I don't know very much about space travel, but I want to make a guess. In the future, we'll be able to travel to space. If you want to decrease the level of confidence of your guess, you can include I think. For example, in the future, I think we'll be able to travel to space. So you can change the level of your confidence of your guess by introducing some other phrases like I think or maybe. All right, so these are a few ways that you can express your abilities in the past, the present, and in the future. These are just a couple of different patterns to do that, but please be careful. Some things that I've noticed are that often students will mix up the present tense can and past tense could. So make sure to use past tense when you're talking about your abilities in the past. And make sure to use present tense for the things you are able to do now. So please keep that in mind. Okay, so that's all for this lesson. I hope that it was helpful for you. If you have any questions or if you want to try making a sentence with one of these expressions, please feel free to do so in the comment section below this video. If you liked the video, please make sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and check us out at EnglishClass101.com for some other good study resources. Thanks very much for watching this lesson, and I will see you again soon. Bye-bye. Hi everybody, my name is Alisha. In this lesson, I'm going to talk about some expressions you can use for receiving things and even asking for things in one case. I'm going to compare a couple of different verbs and a couple of different grammar forms, but you can use these when talking about exchanging objects, receiving or getting objects, or even requesting in some cases. So let's take a look. Let's begin. I want to compare two kind of similar verbs to begin. The first two verbs I want to talk about here are the verbs to get and to receive. So really the difference between these two verbs is that get is just more casual. We use get a lot in everyday conversations. It's just the simple form of receive. Receive sounds more formal. We use receive when we take something from someone else, they give it to us. We use receive in more formal situations. I'll show some examples of that a little bit later. But in most cases, we're going to use the verb get to talk about everyday exchanges. Let's look at a few examples of using get in the present tense and in the past tense for these. So, first one is a past tense example. I got a car for my birthday. So here the verb got is followed by the object here.
So I got a car. That's the thing I now have. I did not have before. This is extra information for my birthday. So for shows us the purpose, and my birthday in this case is the reason. So I got a car for my birthday. Here, the next example sentence is he hopes he gets a big bonus. So here we're using gets in the future. We're talking about a future idea, but hopes means it's happening now. He hopes at this point in time that in the future he's going to get a bonus. So he hopes he gets a big bonus is a nice natural way to say that. So remember, when your subject is he or she or it, we also need to change the verb here. We need to make it, in this case, we see it with hopes and gets. He hopes he gets a big bonus. Same thing with she. She hopes she gets. We use this, remember, present tense. We use present tense to talk about like a regular action, something that's common or something that's just part of a regular schedule or part of like a regular activity. So in this case, hopes. So that means regularly, maybe year round, he hopes he gets a big bonus. Or for the last few months, he hopes he gets a big bonus. So we can think of this as a little extra grammar point for today, I suppose. All right, let's look at a couple of other examples. Past tense here. We got a loan from the bank. We got a loan from the bank. So here is past tense got in this case. Again, we follow the verb got in this case with the item we are getting. Here I've used from. So when you want to show the source, you can use from to do that. We got a loan from, in this case, the bank. You can change this to we got a loan from my parents. We got a loan from our friends. So from is used to show the source of this item, this object, this thing. Okay, let's look at one more example. They got a car for work. So again, we're seeing for is used in this sentence. For is used to show purpose. So here, again, past tense, they got a car, so some item, again, similar to the first example. Here we're seeing the purpose is work. So they got a car for work is slightly different than I got a car for my birthday. So this is showing the reason the person received the car. This one is showing the future use of the car. I got a car for work. So they're both showing a reason for something. But is it past tense? Is it future tense? You kind of have to look at the situation to understand that part. So those are a few examples with the verb get, or past tense got in this case. We'll go on to some more complex examples later. For now, let's look at the verb to receive. So I've used the verb receive a few times already today, but like I said, receive sounds like a more formal situation. So we use it for maybe business or like honorable situations, or maybe for like rules or for paperwork, for example. Let's take a look. Here, it's an honor to receive this award. So in this case, someone is accepting an award. It's probably a formal situation. So we use the verb receive. You could use the verb get here. For example, it's an honor to get this award, but get sounds too casual for something like an award ceremony. So receive sounds much, much better here. It's an honor to receive this award. Let's look at another one. This one is phrased as a question. So here, have you received your passport?